Hello everybody. So, I figured I should tell you all this because it is something that you might come across as well when you're playing Reassembly. You can see now that I've made a, well, relatively okay ship, but there's one big nagging issue with it that I cannot stand. If you look at these brackets, so to speak, they curve around nicely, connect everywhere, even with this little gap here. It says it's still connected, so that's alright. We say exit, we say save, and it looks fine, right? Now, I don't want my command module, root mass, whatever you want to call it, connected to my womb. Because that thing is actually somewhat of a soft spot, a weak spot. So if this thing gets shot, that means that my command module would be shot very quickly as well. So I would instead want it over here. Alright, because now we can actually build something on the front, we can give it proper defenses, and it won't be an issue. Not only that, but the ship will regenerate a little bit faster too, because it doesn't need to go through the womb first. Now watch what happens. You see this? Probably, I don't blame you if you don't see it, but here, this gap, here. It still says it's connected, look, it's still all connected. But here, there's a gap. Now if I say save, regenerate my ship, you will see there's a gap there. If I go now back, you see that they're not connected. You see this little bug here? You see this little massive frustration I've been having over the last few moments? I will be trying to make a ship out of this, and you will probably be seeing it right after this bit, but I figured I should tell you why this has been such a hassle. And possibly, depending on how big of a hassle it will be, I might actually not be able to show you the construction of this ship that I will be making. If that's the case, then I'm very sorry about that, but reassembly simply tends to be a bit of a bugger sometimes. and welcome back to the third episode of the Helios faction in Reassembly. I'm your host Spirit Bounceholder, and actually you've already heard me talking about this because I've been struggling with this guy. But I've got it figured out. I have simply completely abandoned the whole idea of putting the womb in the circle itself, and I've simply decided to just keep it a nice simple plain ass circle. Not very much an improvement of my previous attempts with the Helios faction, but that's what you get when those things start bugging. And even now it's still applicable because the ship now is fine. I've tested it and it assembles correctly, even though there might be a slight gap looking over there. It all works fine. Now if I press, if I now decide to go, gosh darn, stop interrupting me. If I now decide to go back to this menu, you will see the circle is horribly broken. And luckily I can get out of here without that being an issue. So in game it works just fine when you build it and all exactly as intended. But when you go back over here, you will see that it is a mess. Well, since I'm here, I might as well tell you a bit about the ship. Big ray cannons, burst cannons lasers, meaning that they have to charge up before you can fire them, but they do a lot of damage. 600 damage per discharge at 2.3 thousand range. That's quite devastating. And it doesn't even use much energy. And luckily the Helios faction is not reliant on energy for the most part. I've got some Bloodseekers, which basically are the guided version of the tumors. So these things will go where which target I aim at, making them somewhat more useful. Depends a bit on how many you get on the board. I've added Sentinels, which are a big favorite of mine. Their beams look very big and look very powerful, and it's true, even though that the thingy itself is really small and you would expect it to be a lot smaller, but yeah. It does 50 damage per second, which is pretty good for an outfiring weapon. For point defense. It has a range of 1500, which is excellent, really excellent, because that gives us an enormous edge when it comes to attacking opponents that are small and quick, and possibly also rockets and such. But just in case they get by, I've added some couple of spears, which do a little bit higher damage, but are much shorter range. These things are mostly meant for holding back the rockets and missiles, but in case an enemy comes too close, they will also be zapped by these things. The spine itself is mostly just for style. It's a pretty fun thing to have, though. Maybe we might be able to poke something with it, but even if it doesn't happen, that's alright. I didn't expect it to be really like that. We've got a womb now, which means that we can start producing units, which is really nice. This means that we actually are again in the middle of the game, rather than just being rookies at the beginning. We have a few leaves, which generate resources over time and contain a few. All these cysts over here are all just capacitors or storages for the resources, which now rounds down at 5k or about 5k, which is pretty nice. And for as far as I've tried using this ship, it works quite alright. It's not as good as my initial design, but you know why that initial design isn't here right now. If only I didn't find out that gap was there, that little issue was there, like when I was completely done with it. That's perhaps the most painful of all. Like, I only found out after I constructed the whole thing and was like, yes, finally, a proper ship that doesn't fit the standard norm of just being a circle. Well, joke's on me, I guess. But yeah, you can see why I like this ship. You can see why I like the Sentinels. You can see why I like these burst lasers. I've actually put them on alternate fire, which is not the main firing modus. This is a burst firing modus. If I go over to this menu, you can see it's called ripple fire. Now, if I were to grab these and put them back on left mouse button, you can see what they generally would otherwise do. You see them charging up, and they just discharge. And that is devastating. If you get hit by that, that is devastating. But at the same time, it is in combat, especially when fighting a lot of small guys, it is impractical because you will have to constantly be minding how you use the lasers. You constantly have to mind the trigger, so to speak. And that's not the biggest issue, but it's an inconvenience nonetheless. And thus, I would very much choose to. I don't believe this works. You can set it to ripplify this one as well, but last time I checked it doesn't work. I can try. Oh, now it does work. Okay. Probably an update or something. So, oh, it's a lot of slowdown. I wonder what's going on. Well, actually, I don't wonder what's going on. I already explained what is probably going on. Though there's also an agent here in the. There was an agent over there. Seems that he just got blown up by one of our ships. Maybe the bees even did that. I don't know. Gonna try and take a look. Oh dear. Oh yes, it is quite a mess over here as well, actually. Ah. Oh dear. Are we able? Yep. That one at least was down. That would have been quite a bugger if he would have survived. But we took a lot of damage, a lot more than I like to. There you go. I expected my lasers to do more damage, to be honest, but oh gosh, we don't have thrusters. The slowdown is a bugger. Oh dear. Look, that's a little nasty thing with reassembly as well. If you don't have thrusters on one side, the others will not stop firing just because there is nothing to compensate for them. Which basically means that you will be drifting off to one side if you don't have thrusters on both sides at the same time. And that's annoying. That's real annoying. They don't have something like in Space Engineers, like inertia dampeners, which would have been quite useful otherwise. But then inertia dampeners are also dependent on the thrusters, so I suppose it really doesn't matter one way or another. It's so busy here. It's a real city over here, and all these. Oh wait, I know what these are. I was wondering what these are, but these are mines. These little circles are all mines. So I might want to try and blow them up. Hey, get out of here. I probably should have invested a bit more in the thrusters. But that's collateral at this point, I guess. Oh well. Oh, there. I think that's the mothership that was destroyed. If we can collect that R, that would be pleasant. Those resources. There we go. Well over 1,000. Oh. And a little station from the farmers. I still love the farmers. Here you go. Always the easiest, well, always, usually the easiest faction to take down. Now, what you might have actually noticed with our ship design is that it features a specific thing, or it doesn't feature a specific thing that we've been heavily relying on with the Thinkrol, and that are shields. Some factions, the Helios being one of them, don't support shields, which means which ends up being very much a big bonus, a big convenience, and a big inconvenience. Because this means that you will have to start relying on the parts themselves and the sturdiness of them. But generally that sturdiness is higher because the faction is made for being used without shields. So on one hand, you will not be spending power on it. So that's a pro. You will not be spending energy on it. That's very nice. But at the same time, all the damage you get is directly going towards either your hull or your components. And that is very much an inconvenience. Especially when you're so reliant on thrusters being present and always being stuck to the outer side of the ship. So, yeah. It's not great. It's not great if you're stuck in a situation like we are right now, where thrusters are quite important and suboptimally placed, I guess. Because shields would completely eradicate that whole issue. Oh well. At least our weapons are powerful. Spiky plants, well, they aren't that much of an issue anymore. Still cause a lot of slowdown, but we have lasers, and lasers definitely make the whole game a lot easier. They are personally one of my favorite kinds of weapons because of simply being so exceptionally reliable. When you use plasma cannons, those things can very easily miss. When you use rockets, those things can be deflected. But lasers are always gonna find their mark as long as you guide them correctly, and they are generally going to be quite devastating when used in the right number. So I do seem to notice that they're not perfectly aiming, it seems. Aren't super effective, it seems. But oh well. I don't think it will really stand in our way too much. And the thing about the Helios faction that I really like as well is, like I said, I love lasers, so the fact that the Helios faction uses them so often, so much, and has such huge range on them, that really makes it very easy to take things out from a long distance. Very much makes up for the lack of mobility that we experience. And of course, just as with the Thinkrol with small laser defenses, we now are pretty much impervious to rockets as well. So that's a big pro. So let's see if we can actually start a little fleet here. Let's make another Queen Hornet. In fact, we can make 2 of them. Just hope that they will be fully constructed in time. Once the circle is closed, pretty much they will be safe, because at that point they're completely surrounded by armor that is quite sturdy. I believe each of those segments of the circle has about 700 health, so it will last for a little while before things really get hairy for them. Doesn't regenerate too fast, but we're not only relying on those things, luckily. So, oh dear. And another fact about lasers is as well, the spiky plants are really susceptible to lasers, because the thing the spiky plants are very much reliant on is also the fact that you can very poorly hit the core. The cores are almost always exposed with those plants, but they are so tightly packed together that it's really hard to really easily just destroy their cores. But with lasers, either you can make a very pinpoint hole which saves you a lot of time to actually burrow towards that core, or you can very much snipe them. Makes them very powerful indeed. So with setups like mine currently, especially with a small fleet of my ship, that's going to really make a very quick clear of this whole situation. So yeah. And of course, unlike what the Tinkerel had to do, because you use lasers and because you can more accurately snipe those spiky plant cores, there's likely going to be less damage on asteroids. And that might sound very trivial, and generally it is, but especially with factions like the Farmer, and in fact even other factions if the Farmer happen to be nearby, there is actually use for asteroids, because the Farmer faction can actually plant plants, actually make some plants grow on asteroids, which will very rapidly start to generate R and very rapidly start to procreate, which makes it an exceptionally fast way of getting resources. Not only that, but the Crystal Plants faction, which I have now actually come around to playing for a bit, also are able to infect, so to say, with seeds, which causes basically their plant life to reproduce quite as violently as the spiky plants, and in fact be quite as defensible as well. So you can basically start to take over the spiky plants and replace them with your own faction's plant, which is quite a funny thing to do actually, even though it takes a long time, because spiky plants those things still are a massive inducer of slowdowns, and in general not the easiest to deal with in general, so yeah. I'm still frustrated about that ship. Developers, if you're watching, please make that system a little bit more accurate. Either make sure that they don't connect at all when you don't want them to, or be a bit more lenient and make sure that they actually stay connected, because I don't really mind either way, just make sure it's actually going to work the way it looks, okay? I've been spending about, what, an hour and a half trying to make a proper ship. That's also part of the fun, I must say. The challenge of factions like the Helios faction is actually making a proper ship like that. And the moment you think you can cut a corner like that, it's just like, oh, thank God, we can finally make a ship that really looks like something nice. And it's like, nope, actually not going to happen. Sorry. But yeah. Enough about me whining and moaning about that stuff. We got a proper ship right now. So, and we can activate a station over here. I hope that ship over there will survive. And then we would have 4 ships. Let them fire at will, actually. We'll make them very much... will make them a lot more effective when it comes to the spiky plants, because there are so many of them. You just want them to be firing as much as possible, really. Not really be concerned with which one is your target specifically. There are situations obviously when that is actually exactly what you want, especially when fighting capital ships and such. But spike plants don't have that kind of firepower. They rely on numbers, not on power, so just let them be eradicated as quickly as possible. I'll be a happy man. Zip, 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 zip. I actually made a little ship with the farmer faction, which also relies on lasers somewhat. Well, actually, no, they don't really rely too much on lasers, but I made them rely on lasers regardless. um, and I just made a ship that was almost completely made out of lasers, power, and shields, and pretty much that's it. And I called it the Laser Weeder. Because basically that's the whole purpose of the thing. It was the most powerful weapon I've ever used against the spiky plants, where it didn't automatically meant that I would have to be blowing up the asteroids in the process. So that was a fun fact. That was very fun at first. Though the ship itself is not all that powerful. Only if he fights against a fleet of enemies that use mostly rockets or drones will it actually be effective. But that doesn't always happen. That is certainly not something you will see every day, every fight. And especially not when just running around in single player rather than in something like the tournaments. Which I probably will be holding at the end of the Helios faction when we reach 8,000 power with them as well. So. And I see that there is a little agent here nearby. I reckon that should be fun actually. Try and see what our little fleet can do against them. Love that look. The moment you cut a ship in half. Alright. Let's see what we can do against them. They're sturdy mates. Gotta give them that. But they seem to be mostly reliant on rockets or drones. Not sure which, but either way, it will only spell their doom. I think this is a farmer faction actually. Ooh. There's the main captain, and that was the main captain. Now you can see why we made that structure. Why we actually made it to be just a big circle, because it protects us so exceptionally well. And the things we attach to those circles, to this main core circle, actually will, these Siths basically will respawn quite quickly, it seems. So that's a big convenience as well. Even if we get stuck without thrusters, they will come back relatively quickly then. There goes another ship. Hope that it survives. If it does, then we'll have another ship in our little army. That would mean even faster clearing of all this mess. Because that's the only way to describe the bloody spiky plants. It's just a mess. And you don't want to deal with it. You just don't. Even when you're good at dealing with them, you don't want to deal with them because it's simply so... Well, I suppose you've been watching my episodes. You tell me why it's so boring. They're so numerous, so almost infinite. There we go, another one. finally starting to make some headway with actually clearing them out. Yeah, come on, that little bit far still. There we go. There goes another one. Want to free you. Seem to be stuck. There you go. Another one done. Actually, yeah. Seems we've taken control of this area. We've wiped them out. Well, we have the greater dominance over this area right now. I reckon that it means that we will be done quite quickly with it. Quite soon indeed. But looking at the time, it's almost ready to call an end again. So, oh dear, look at our own faction plans. We can't actually make them ourselves, which is somewhat of a disappointment. Would have liked to see that, like to be able to just like with spike plants, or the crystal plants I mean, to just start infecting the universe yourself. But it's not something you can do with the Helios faction. Seems though that we're almost in the clear. Almost. Oh, and there's another station that can be activated. We actually have a whole bunch of stations already floating around over here, but no matter. Just want to activate more. I think that next time, despite having a little less credits than last episode, we'll be able to make one of my most favorite designs yet. But before then, let's sell these friends of ours off. Let them off the hook. Because that will mean that we get some additional credits. There you go. That's why you don't trade them anymore, the resources anymore, because you can simply sell off the ships you make yourself for the resources. So there. We actually cleared this all out. And I'll now take a look and see if we'll have enough. I hope that will be enough. I think it will. But then next time we'll be again making a spinner ship. And we'll be making quite a chaos, I reckon so. If that design that I made back then is something I can do again. With about 3,000. Or is it about 4,000? Yeah, 3,000 P. Then that should be quite a spectacle indeed. Anyway, I've been Spirit Balance Holder. This has been Reassembly Helios episode 3. And I hope you all have a great day today.